Hello and welcome to The Virtuous Life. I'm your host, Pat Odie Murray. And depending on if you listen to the morning program, Morning Offering, you may have caught this interview part. And again, those are short little tastes of what these writers write. And I'm always excited when they're willing to come on to The Virtuous Life. It gives us a full hour to look at their article and talk about it. Excuse me. The person that you might have heard a few weeks ago was Kenneth Cramer, and we were talking about articles that he wrote for the Catholic Stand. Let me tell you a little bit about Kenneth and why I think these articles he wrote were so important, and then we're going to jump into it. Kenneth Cramer, M.A., he is a Catholic writer, speaker, ministry professional. He has a background in theology and counseling. He spent years walking with families, couples, and individuals as they navigate the joys and struggles of faith and daily life. His writing explores the depth of Catholic teaching, the beauty of the spiritual life, and the challenges of living out the gospel in the modern world. He's passionate about strengthening marriages, forming the next generation in faith, and fostering authentic Catholic culture. And he certainly does that. He does that so well. And so the articles, it was a two-part article found in Catholic Stand, and it's called God's Children Are Under Attack. And it was a part one and a part two. Hopefully we're going to be able to talk about both of them today. But Kenneth, thank you so much for saying yes to be a part of this conversation.
No, my pleasure, Pat. Absolutely. All my pleasure.
So how long have you been involved in kind of counseling, ministry, all the things that I listed?
Yeah. My life and my career has been nothing short of an adventure, and I give thanks to God for that, for sure. I think I started my counseling practice back in, I guess that'd be like 2016.
Okay.
And then I moved on to education after about 10 years of doing that.
Okay.
And now work in ministry. So I'd say it's been, like a good, 10, 11 years. But, I've had a long history in the church. I was in seminary for a little while as well, too. So
okay.
I've kind of been, for a long time.
Well, these articles, I think, are amazing because what I like is you don't pussyfoot around. You're not. Yeah. I mean, you're
pretty
very
good at being blunt.
Yeah, you're very much about, hey, this is what's going on, and we got to take this seriously. And I love it because it's certainly, obviously, God's children are under attack. And so, with your background, what is the shift that you have seen in kids today? Yeah,
so if I could share a story
sure.
that I think perfectly kind of answers this question. So the 7 years or so that I taught high school theology, I taught a class on the morality of technology. So the schools I worked at allowed me to kind of put this unit into the bigger area of morality. And
sure.
I just thought this is something that we really need to talk about, because I started noticing how much time kids were spending on their phones and how much, of a distraction it was causing in the classroom, hearing from parents how it was a constant fight with their kids to get them off screens. And so what I would do is I would start that unit by having all of my students share with me a screenshot of their screen time on their phones, right?
Ah.
So it would show you the average amount of time that they were using their phone. And so after about 7 years of collecting all of this data, that average amount of time that a teenager was spending on their phones per day was 7.5 hours.
Wow. More than they spend in school.
Yes. And what kind of makes this even more impactful is that the schools I were at did a fairly good job of trying to get kids to limit their phone use. So we had some pretty strict policies around not using your phones. So I would tell the kids at kind of lecture them and be like, all right, so here's the average. I'm going to give you that you're sneaking in like an hour worth of time during school.
Sure.
Okay. You go to the bathroom, you're like, whatever.
Right.
I know most of you are doing extracurricular activities after school, and your coaches are really strict about using phones.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll give you another half hour, let's say, like when you're practicing.
Mm-hmm.
So that means you're going home and you're literally spending 6 hours on your phone. Instead of doing what? And that they, of course, would say, oh, homework. And I'm like, well, yes, your homework, but even more importantly than that, sleeping.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what I noticed, Pat, was not only all of the social concerns that have come from it, it was most of my students were not going to bed until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Because they would be socializing all the way into the wee hours of the night. And then all of a sudden, oh, I got to do my homework. And then so they come to school and they're like walking zombies. They're just tired, constantly falling asleep. And I really started to notice the difference between kids who were sleeping and kids who were not sleeping.
Wow.
And then running into, like, when we went on retreats, I started noticing, because we would take kids' phones away.
Sure.
And several students would come up to me and say, Mr. Cramer, how am I supposed to go to bed? And I'm like, well, I don't understand. Well, I need my phone to go to bed.
Oh, my.
And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, Pat, what the kids are doing is they're literally just like scrolling through their phone until they get so exhausted that they fall asleep. It's like they've lost the ability to fall asleep normally.
Wow.
And they like have to exhaust themselves because that's what they think it takes in order to get to bed. And so on these retreats, it would take like a good 2 days for kids to actually understand that, oh, if I just close my eyes, like I can fall asleep. I don't have to be so exhausted.
Right. And screen time too. I mean, because I've noticed this even in my own life. I have to be on, because you're grading online, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so I end up, a lot of times I want to get things done outside while it's daylight, etc. And so at night, then instead of watching TV or something, I'll grade or I'll answer emails and it is hard for me to fall asleep after that blue light or whatever. It took me a while to figure out that's what was going on with me, and so, and then to know that they're spending 7 hours on their phone, they're probably not getting any movement hardly when they get home. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
And how do you sleep when you haven't expended any energy? I mean,
yep.
So it's all working against them.
And then you throw on top of that, like what I think is like the biggest difference, say, so I'm kind of like late Gen X, kind of the last generation not to have social media in high school, have cell phones in high school.
Right.
Is that, I would tell my students, I was like, the biggest difference I see between our generations is that when I went home from school, my socialization just stopped. I couldn't socialize anymore. I had to socialize with my family.
Right.
Or, if I wanted to call somebody, there was a phone attached to a wall that my parents would constantly monitor. Right. And so I would go in my room and my parents gave me 2 choices, Pat. It was like, okay, well, I could do homework or I could not do my homework and stare at walls.
Right.
And so I would tell the kids, what do you think Mr. Cramer did? And they're like, you did your homework. I'm like, no, actually, I was a pretty poor high school student. I stared at walls. But you want to know what I was doing when I was staring at walls? And they're like, what? I was like, I was dreaming. I was using my imagination. I was thinking about my life. I was sitting in silence. I cultivated, without even knowing it, the ability to be with my own thoughts. And since now that kids, they have no break from socialization. It's 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they never, and this is for adults too. You know? So now instead of I'm waiting for somebody to show up at a restaurant, instead of just kind of sitting there with myself, you immediately pull out the phone and start scrolling.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so now we don't know how to cultivate silence either, which is so important because, like Mother Teresa said, like the soul grows in silence. Right? You can't really grow without it. So.
Yeah. And I mean, the world's noisy in so many ways, and our phones and things like that are just a part of it. So one of the things I want to come back to, Kenneth, is at the beginning of your very first article, because You say you were reminded as you deal with, these kids and their loneliness and restlessness and, that they are carrying kind of this weight, as you put it, of kind of technology and don't even realize what it's doing to them, but it is hurting them.
Yes.
And you talked about a theology professor who once said, and I'm going to quote it from the article, in Scripture, whenever things get really bad, when God resets the world or sends prophets or permits judgment, it's very often because humanity has started to destroy its own children. I read that. And then you go on and talk about how we see this in salvation history. And it kind of just slaps you in the face, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And I mean, one can say, this is just kind of like pouring salt onto the wound. Like we do a pretty good job of, killing our children before they're born.
Exactly.
Right? So there's that aspect.
Exactly.
More times than any other time in human history. But now it's even carried on to, it's kind of all children. It's not just the preborn. It's like, well, now we've found out, the specific sort of way to really kind of hurt a whole generation of people. And it really is unfortunate because I'm not sure that we could have. I guess we had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And, the good news is like I had emailed you, there are 17 states now that have outlawed cell phone use in schools. Yeah. So the latest one being in Texas, and then, thank goodness in my state, New Hampshire, that passed just a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. So this upcoming school year, there's no cell phone use allowed in Catholic schools or public schools from bell to bell.
Yeah. And I think we have to kind of look at this from a stance of, and you talk about this mental health crisis, and we certainly look around in our culture, and there is a mental health crisis. I'm seeing much more of this with my students. Oh, yeah. And you talk about, and I love this because, you just say, well, we really didn't mean to do this, but we just handed them these phones and tablets, and because everybody else was doing it. Boy, that's one of the things that my mom would certainly never let me say. Well, everybody else was doing it. But we even see it as a rite of passage, or, and I want to kind of dig here a little bit, Ken, because I want to know what you think as to why do we do this? Why are we always so anxious to get on to the next new thing before we even have any clue about it, how it will affect our lives?
Oh, yeah. I think that comes in part with a culture that is kind of really steeped in a kind of materialism, right? Where when the basis of your culture is essentially consumerism, right? To consume things. And there's, good things about that and bad things about it. One of the negative consequences is that I think it does kind of make us more affected by the new and the novel. There's a line in our baptismal promises. So when somebody's getting baptized, right, and we're all sitting there watching somebody, a child or even an adult, be baptized, they'll ask a series of questions, right? Like, do you believe this? Do you reject this? Right. And one of those is, do you reject the glamour of evil, the glamour of the devil? And that word has always struck me, that like evil things tend to be kind of glamorous. Yeah. They're bright, they're shiny.
They're enticing.
And that's what makes them attractive, right? Is we're kind of attracted to it. So there's a part of it that's our own concupiscence. But when you take in that technology is moving so fast, even AI itself has changed so much in the last 6 months. That it's just constant newness. And so when you have constant newness, constant change at a pace, it's almost kind of natural and instinctual for us to try to keep up.
Yeah.
And then what that does is it kind of severs the discernment process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is so quick to
Yeah.
get onto the new, the novel, because it's going to have this effect or make this much money and do these things, that we kind of have forgot the discernment process
Very
to actually
true.
discern whether or not these things are good to do.
That is so true. That's a great insight, Ken, because I think certainly materialism is a big piece of this. I think I agree with you. And I think that kind of newness, we get bored quickly. We don't discern. That is a great insight, because we never really slow down and say, well, is this going to be good for me in the end? We don't think things through. We just react to something. Well, somebody else got that, so that must be a good thing. And I think we saw that even during COVID, during all this. I was amazed at how quickly people in our society just, okay. I mean, it's like, okay, can we slow down and think this through? What do we know? What don't we know? And I'm thinking all of this kind of fits in, I think, with what's going on with our kids when we talk about technology. So can you kind of give us, give our audience some ideas, and they may already be aware of them, some of it, but what has research, studies, et cetera, found as to how, the screen time, being on your phone all the time or tablet or whatever, how that affects kids? What are some of the effects we're seeing?
Yeah. Well, so there are, what I would speak to is two different effects. One, like it's addictive. We know it's addictive.
Right.
Right. And the principles that are built into a lot of the apps that we use, the way that notifications happen on our phone. I mean, the people who built those things legitimately built them with knowing what's going to grab your attention and what's going to keep you coming back, right? And so there is this kind of very human psychological level of the process of addiction. And the people that have created these processes, and they admit it, it's not like they're trying to hide it, that these are the principles in which this is going to keep people coming back and keep scrolling and keep their attention. So that's one aspect, right? It actually has trained not just our children, but us too, to really become kind of a culture of addicts, right? Where we're just constantly addicted to something.
Right.
And we need that little dopamine rush that comes with every time I pick up my phone, if I have a text message or an email. The second part, I think, is actually a lot deeper, and it has to do with relationships. So what I would want to remind kind of the audience is that God himself is relationship, right? Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So the very kind of like essence of God is relationship. So it makes complete sense then that when there is dysfunction or erosion within relationships, whether that's with God himself, our families, ourselves, that dysfunction really starts to expand and breathe very well. Because God himself is relationship. Our very existence is based upon relationship. And what these things have done for our kids and for ourselves is it has tapped into our innate human desire for relationship. These things have been built under the premise that they were going to help us have relationships.
Right.
That now my child can talk to their friends 24/7. Now I can get on a computer and talk to this person across the world. Like during COVID, now we can just do everything online. And what we've started to find, and this is even further now, Pat, with AI chatbots, right? And the idea of kids having kind of like in-depth conversations with, robotic technology, is that there is no replacement for flesh and flesh relationship, like being in front of a person.
Right.
And what happens. And so we're further removing ourselves from actual human relationship and actual human connection. And it leads to, it's just your body acting naturally, right?
Right,
when
right.
your body, your soul's not getting what it needs, it responds with depression, anxiety, anger, dysfunction. Those are kind of like natural consequences to when you're not taking care of yourself. Just like if you don't take care of yourself by eating the right kinds of food, exercising properly, your body gets sick, it gets weak.
Right.
Well, the same thing happens to us mentally when we don't have healthy relationships. And so to me, that is one of the core aspects, is that we've lost the ability to have real in-depth human connection, and how precious and necessary that is.
So technically, I mean, and certainly you point out in your article that Pew and Gallup consistently, their studies show that Gen Z reports the highest levels of anxiety, depression, and loneliness ever recorded in American youth. So people who kind of buy into that, I can have these relationships through technology. What we're finding is they really can't. I mean, there's still this loneliness. Because if it was serving the purpose to connect with others and to be in relationship, then we wouldn't have anxiety, depression, and loneliness. It would be serving the cause it says it serves. So one of the things, Ken, that I also want to kind of pick your brain a little bit about is because, you say, we just hand them this stuff. They're not ready for it. We didn't train them how to use it properly. We don't. So a couple of questions here. First of all, do you think there is an appropriate age to introduce technology, or even more, to actually have their own smartphone? And how do you get them ready for that? How do you train them for that? So I kind of want to see how you see that.
Absolutely. That's a big question. And, obviously I would color that with, this is just my idea.
Sure.
Like I don't make any claims on whether or not like this is exactly how it should be done. But, I think there's some value in these, contemplating the idea. I think where my heart goes, Pat, is that I really don't think kids should have kind of unsupervised access to a lot of this new technology, even cell phones or AI, until after high school.
Yeah.
And I know that's going to make a lot of people be like, well, that's ridiculous. But
I agree with you.
Here's what we can do. Right. So now that people have started to really understand, like, you just can't deny the science anymore. It was kind of like with smoking, right? It's the same kind of thing, or with pornography, like the science is just so clear that this is harming people. This is not good. So now you have schools that are saying, all right, no cell phones, no tech. So in Texas, right, that's not just cell phones, that's smartwatches, that's tablets. Anything that isn't like a school-sponsored device are no longer allowed in schools. So what needs to happen is, the idea that technology is going to be used is not going away. But what needs to happen is, now in high school, starting in middle school, really, we need to have very explicit courses and classes around the morality of technology and its proper use. Like, we actually have to be very explicit in training our kids and how to use these tools to recognize the signs of addiction.
Right.
And here's a big part. I have my entire educational career, Pat, I have really fought. And I was lucky enough that at one of my schools, they kind of let me, because I taught psychology, at the school, and they allowed me to use my psychology class kind of for this purpose. We also have to be very direct and explicit in teaching kids human formation, about how to have relationships. Yes. About how to resolve conflicts, how to deal with their emotions. And this can't just be kind of like off-put on parents or coaches. It needs to be taught explicitly through a course, so that when kids leave high school and they go to college, that they have been formed in the best possible way how to experience real human connection, to not be afraid of it, and to understand the dangers and the benefits of all the technology that they're going to use in the real world. So my idea is that I just wrote this article for the Catholic Stand about AI stuff. And my whole point is that AI can be very beneficial depending on who is sitting behind the screen. So if you have somebody sitting behind the screen who is not formed, that doesn't know how to ask deep questions or think critically, then AI is going to be really manipulative and dangerous.
Yep.
And so we have to teach our kids, we have to form them.
Right.
We have to teach them to be mature adults. And so I really do think it's not a hard ask to say, and Catholic schools can lead in this. You know what? We're going to have courses that are specifically designed around these two things. We're going to teach our kids how to have healthy relationships, and we're going to teach our kids how to appropriately and maturely use technology. So you would start to have kids use some of it, right? You don't want them not being prepared for the world that they're going to live in, but it needs to be cultivated and crafted. And I think, I think it'll be, now that so many states have outlawed the use of this stuff in schools. Right. I think, again, the science will just be clear. You're going to unfortunately see this whole generation that unfortunately has been really hurt. Yeah. And you're going to start seeing this new generation kind of be like, oh, see, things are better. Right. Right.
Yeah. And
it's clear.
I think the other thing too is I think parents do need to take responsibility in the sense of looking at their own use of technology. If you're always on your phone, always doing that, that's what your kids see. So, it's kind of like everything else we teach morally in the Catholic Church. We can teach it in our Catholic school, but we're hoping that it is, reiterated and focused on in the home too. We are at break. Ken, this is going by so fast. So I want to let people know who we're talking with today. It's Kenneth Cramer, Catholic writer, speaker, ministry professional. He has a background in theology and counseling, and he certainly has been a part of counseling families and couples and individuals as they navigate the joys and struggles of faith. And we're talking about a two-part article he wrote for the Catholic Stand called Our Children Are Under Attack, or God's Children Are Under Attack. A lot of good stuff in this first half of the show. I hope you'll join us in the second half of the show as we continue to look at that. You're listening to The Virtuous Life. I'm your host, Pat Odie Murray.
Jesus commanded his disciples to go forth and preach the gospel to all nations. This they did in word and in deed. More recently, the Second Vatican Council reaffirmed every Catholic's role in this Great Commission. In answer to this call, St. Paul Street Evangelization has developed a unique, non-confrontational approach to this mandate, loosely modeled after the modern pro-life movement. We aren't like many other evangelists that are pushy and in your face. We don't stand and yell on street corners or force anyone to listen to us if they don't want to. Instead, St. Paul Street Evangelization is committed to presenting a positive, passionately Catholic, and non-confrontational presence to a world hungry for the truth. For more information on how you can help, go to www.streetevangelization.com. That's www.streetevangelization.com.
The Order of Christian Initiation for Adults is a journey of faith. OCIA classes are designed for those who desire full communion with the Catholic Church. Whether you are new to the faith or want to learn more, or have been away from the Church, or haven't received the sacraments as a child and want to come back, OCIA classes are for you. Contact your parish or the local Catholic Church and register for the next session.
Welcome back to The Virtuous Life. I'm your host, Pat Odie Murray. And today, this has just been such a great conversation because this is something as a teacher, a professor at a university, I struggle with. And in my own life, I don't seem to struggle much with it. but I don't have children. And so I think that's part of it too. But today, Kenneth Cramer is our guest. He is a Catholic writer, speaker, ministry professional, background in theology and counseling, spent years walking with couples and families and individuals as they navigate the joys and struggles of faith and daily life. And his writings are really, I love them because he's very clear. You can't think, gee, I wonder how Ken sees this. He's very, very clear. And the article that we're talking about, it's a two-parter, and it's in, if you want to read it, go to the website Catholic Stand and look for Kenneth Cramer. But the article is called God's Children Are Under Attack. Welcome back, Ken. It's so great having you on the show.
Oh, I love being here.
Well, one of the things you talk about and we're still on your first article, still on part one, but you talk about it's important to have a built-in rhythm to life, and it's important to be able to disconnect from socialization. Tell us why those two things are important.
Well, I think the biggest reason why it's important is because, as I mentioned earlier, like kind of all real personal and spiritual growth happens in the context of silence, of contemplation, right? Mm-hmm. The church holds that the highest form of prayer is contemplative prayer. Mm-hmm. And so again, I'll go back to share with you a success story. At the first school that I taught, we had what's called a block schedule, right? So for people who don't know what that is, periods 1 through 4 were on, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the rest were on Wednesdays and Fridays. So I had like an hour and a half for each class. And then on Mondays, it was weird. It was like a normal schedule where I saw all 7 periods in one day, and the classes were 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so what I decided to do on those Mondays with those 45-minute classes is, instead of maybe teaching content, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna help these kids learn how to sit in silence. So I would take them to adoration in our chapel. And at first, I knew what I was dealing with. The school did not have like strict policies around cell phone use, and they gave all the kids, laptops and things.
Right.
And I allowed the kids, basically without being super disrespectful, to do what they would do inside the chapel. So if they wanted to play on their phones, they could do that. If they fell asleep, it's fine. I didn't really correct outside of like just really super disrespectful behavior. I mean, I think that's kind of disrespectful anyway, but
right.
But I knew I had to start someplace.
Okay.
And then so after a couple weeks, I then removed options. Okay, guys, you can't use your phones anymore. But if you'd like to bring a book, you can like read a book. I'm still not going to like wake up kids that are falling asleep. And eventually we got to the point through an entire semester where, Pat, I had, 20 kids at a time going and sitting in a chapel without any technology, without any books, and not falling asleep. And now, obviously, I wasn't inside their head, so I don't know what they're thinking about. But all I knew is that for a half hour, I had 20 teenagers sitting in silence in front of a tabernacle and not being distracted and not falling asleep. And once that happened, the next semester, kids like started asking for it.
Yeah.
Right. They were like, Mr. Cramer, I look so forward to Monday because I get to just relax and think. And then all of a sudden our chaplain catches on. It's like, Ken, this is amazing. So then he starts holding confessions. And so kids are going to confession and having real conversation with Father David. And it just taught kids the value and how much they didn't realize what they were missing.
Yeah.
By being able to sit in silence and not have any kind of distractions. I think that kind of,
I was just going to say, what I love about that, Ken, is that because so often, like, parents might take their kids to adoration and the kids are bored or whatever, fidgeting, and they say, well, that's it. I'm not taking them back. It's like this perseverance, and we certainly hear that word a lot in Scripture.
Yeah.
This perseverance and the way you crafted it was wonderful. I mean, it's like, okay, well, let's just get them there first.
Absolutely.
And
you got to start small steps.
Yeah, instead of just expecting them to walk in and be a saint already at adoration, but then to move them, to say, okay, I know you were on your phone the last couple of times we were in adoration, but this time we're going to try it without, leave it at home or whatever. So parents can train their children in these things, and I think that's one of the things that I see sometimes, and I'm not a parent, so I've got to be very careful. I know I can't even imagine what it's like to raise children in this day and age. I think, oh my God, I pray for all of my family every day, because I think raising kids is, in this culture that is surrounded by so much stuff that is meant to take them away from the Lord, it's just very difficult. So, but there is sometimes, and you bring it up in your article, and I've heard this, this kids will be kids, you got to let them, well, but they don't grow, as you say, in virtue on their own. We need to train them. And so you give a beautiful example there of how to kind of train them to disconnect and to find joy in that there is a good reason for that. And that was just built into our lives growing up, where it's not. Technology takes that away.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why, families really, again, it's a matter of health and growth. Yeah. Right. To build in, time away from the technology, which again, I think it's just, it does my heart, so good to see so many states kind of now helping in that process. Right. So with, these new laws and regulations that are coming out, it's really there to help the family, which is great. So now it's not just on the parents. Right. The parents will actually have partners in the schools saying, okay, yes, your kids are coming here, and guess what? They're not going to be on technology all the time. And that's going to help parents when the kids come home to there's already a precedent set. They're growing up in an environment without it, so it'll be a little bit easier to say, yeah, guys, hey, we're not going to use our phones. We're just going to enjoy each other's company. We're going to play a board game, or we're going to silently read if it's a house full of introverts. Yeah.
But I do think, and education jumped on that technology bandwagon really fast. Really everybody's got a laptop, or everybody's got to we'll give you a tablet if you come here, or teachers wanted smart boards. And my husband was director of technology for his school districts. And the teachers sometimes got really upset with him because they'd want a smart board. And he'd say, well, I need you to be trained in it and show me how you're going to use it in your lesson plans before we buy you a smart board. They just thought, well, it's technology, we should have it. And I look around now at even, universities and places that put smart boards in and nobody's using them, and so it's like all of that money was wasted on that technology. And a couple of years ago, the people that listen to this show regularly know that because I came close to quitting because I was so tired of technology in my classroom, kids looking at their phones, their laptops, it was just, I couldn't have a conversation with them. And in theology and ethics, you need to be able to converse. And
that's kind of the whole point.
It is, yeah. And so I finally just said, okay, I'm either going to quit teaching, or I'm making a rule, no technology while class is going on. And so I decided, well, I'll give it a shot for a semester. And of course, it was like deer in the headlights when the kids walked in and said, what? We can't use our lap? No, you can't. And I said, Anna, I'm not going to use technology. I said, I'm putting notes on the board. I'll have handouts. We'll talk about things. That's what we're going to do. And I love teaching again. And so it really does. It makes a big difference. Well, I want to get into, Ken, because I want to touch on this second article, because you talk about the illusion of parental oversight. Because a lot, you hear parents say that, well, I'm looking at my kids' phones and everything's okay. Why do you consider this, this parental oversight an illusion when it comes to technology?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I still teach parents this to this day, that your children know more about technology and their phones than you do. And that is just fundamentally true. Yeah. Right? Like they've grown up with it. They have an intuition about it, right? So there's this idea of like, being technologically intuitive, people older, like, people in the baby boomer generation and some like older Gen X, they don't just naturally know how to like open up a computer program and how to use it, right? Right. Kids as young as like 6, 7 years old just know, oh, I touch here, these signs mean this, and they can just navigate whatever they want. Right. And so, not that the parental oversight is that whatever you think, essentially, like you have managed with your children, children have absolutely learned ways to subvert that or get around it. Oh, yeah. And as I talk about in my article, right, like this has even happened kind of like with language, using the acronyms that they use or the emojis that they use that have double meanings and things like that. So it's kind of like an increased version of slang, right? Like every generation has its own slang that it uses. Right. That adults have a hard time grasping. And so that's like just multiplied. Right. And now it's happened kind of hiddenly out of parents' reach or parents' eyes. And so I brought up in the article I was kind of reflecting on Lord of the Flies. Yeah. Essentially, that's what's happened. Like we've allowed children to create kind of this alternate kind of reality or socialization process that happens without parents being able to see it. And when kids are left to their own devices without moral guidance, they typically don't choose what's good. And that's because they need adults to form them. Right. And so we've allowed these kids to, expand in this digital sphere and create their kind of like own little social microcosm that we don't have a good eye on. And I must admit, Ken, when I was reading this article and you were talking about what different emojis mean and different coded, letters, and I'm thinking I'm clueless. I didn't know any of that. Yeah. I mean, the LOL, laugh out loud kind of stuff. Okay, I know that. That's it, and so I'm thinking as a parent, as you look at this stuff, you would be clueless as to what it means. And then I thought, geez, I should remember these. And then I thought, but then they'll probably change like in another month. Like you said, these things morph because it's about being secret. I want to be secretive. And the other thing that I think you brought up so well when you're talking about all this is you said, this isn't just a loss of control, it's a loss of relationship. You want to talk a little bit about that? Because I do think we think it's a control issue, but I love that you said it's a loss of relationship. Yeah, I mean, when a child is kind of pulled away from their family all the time, right, it just kind of naturally follows that it already severs like a strained relationship with parents. So the kid, through these addictive qualities is drawn to the screen or wants to socialize with their friends. And of course, that socialization with their friends is sometimes not really based in truth and goodness, right? It's kind of people putting on their best selves and only saying nice things, or the unfortunate realities of like online bullying and things like that. Right. So I remember also being in a class where, it was a theology class, Pat, and some of my students came up to me after class because I love asking deep questions. I want to teach them to think deeply. Yes. And they were like, Mr. Cramer, we all want to answer your questions, but we can't. I was like, well, why can't you? And they're like, well, you just don't understand that if I say something and somebody else finds that, stupid or something, then it's just going to get blasted on social media and I'm never going to live it down.
Mm-hmm.
And so kids would choose not to engage, not to say anything. And so then that's filtered even into their relationships, right? So they know that if they say the wrong thing, or how easy it is for people to take something that somebody said and then manipulate it into something else, which is only increased with AI technology, then it's led them to be silent and not really engage in real relationship, in the vulnerability and the authenticity that they crave. Right. So there's a reason why this generation of kids deeply craves authenticity, because they so rarely get it.
Yeah.
So that they're looking for their parents and adults to be authentic, to be transparent, because they exist in a world through social media that is not that way.
Yeah. Do you, one of the things that I never thought about, and you talk about it as a catch-22, is, because as a parent, especially if they've already got it, it's one thing if they're not, you haven't given them a phone, you haven't allowed them to be a part of social media, because you're trying to form them in wisdom and virtue so that when they do engage it, they know what to do. But once, they've been given it in, the fifth grade or sixth grade or whatever, and no formation occurs, and they're just looking at all kinds of stuff, and social media, you say to take it away sometimes, like to say, okay, that's it. We're done with the phones. You're not having a phone, da-da-da. You see, we really put ourselves in a catch-22. Can you explain that? Because that would be, I'll tell you, knowing my personality, if I had kids, and then I found, of course, they wouldn't have a phone. But if they did, I would just say, okay, that's it. Once I read all this stuff, I'd say, I'm taking it away. and you're saying, well, okay, there's a catch-22 here. Can you explain that?
Yeah, well, there's this delicate balance. And the delicate balance is, unfortunately or fortunately, for better or worse, the technology is not going away. And our culture and our world is going to be deeply impacted and shaped. And that's reality. And so to sometimes have kind of which I think is, not a bad impulse, but the impulse just to remove it, right? Well, we're going to be a family that never uses it and doesn't, and lives that way. That's certainly a choice that a family could make, but that's not going to solve like the wider issue for the world. So sometimes, especially if you've already allowed children to do it, what you're doing by just taking it away is removing them from kind of like child society, right? And you're kind of putting them in isolation. So then what'll happen is like all their friends, will be, knowing like, oh, we're meeting at the movie theater, or going here, and, they're just not going to be included anymore because they know, that, this child doesn't have that kind of stuff. Now that's where I do think what's going on with all of the states making these laws, like, again, that's really going to help parents to be able to, like that isn't going to be as much of an option because so much of their day is going to be absent of that technology. And then again, like, I think it would be important to set limits, right? When you get home, to take what society is now offering you as a help, right? Parents are going to have a big responsibility to say, okay, yeah, so when you come home from school, it's not just unfettered access to technology.
Right.
We're going to continue what the school has put in place, and we're going to help shape it. So you're going to have, until this time period to hang out with your friends, via social media. And it all goes back to teaching kids how to use it. So I personally want to try to find ways to where, we live in the world, but are not of the world.
Right.
And not kind of go the the Amish way of just completely removing ourselves from the world. But that's my personal opinion.
Sure.
And, there are arguments to be made on the other side as well too. So and I would respect those.
Yeah. I remember growing up with families that decided not to have TVs in their house, And I remember people thinking, geez, that's really odd, but their kids read books and played and they were really smart in school and did well in life. So it's like we tend to think that if we don't do all of these things, we're holding our children back. But I agree with you, I think, in the sense that it's all about training them. It's all about getting them to understand what is good and why it's good. And one of the things I wanted to ask real quick before we kind of get into this, I want to quickly touch on these three things. And we've kind of been talking about them anyway. But do you know of do you ever give parents any kind of insight into apps or things that they can do, especially if they do give phones to their kids when they're younger, that will kind of protect their kids in a way? Are you aware of any?
I mean, there are. I mean, most cell phones at this point, especially. I'm most familiar with Apple because I'm on my own. I mean, certainly cell phones themselves have mechanisms built into it for parents and parent controls. Like one of those things, I actually use it for myself. I'll be completely transparent and open. I have like a time limit set on my YouTube app.
Oh, that's good. So
then when my YouTube, so I can use it for a half hour a day. Mm-hmm. And after a half hour, it locks up and I can't access it until the next day. That's great. And so obviously as an adult, like I could simply press a couple buttons and undo that if I want to. Right. But, I'm maintaining my own sense of discipline. But for parents, they can set those things up on their kids' phones. Mm-hmm. Where the kid can't get around that, or so the best thing that a parent can do when it comes to specifically cell phones is they could go to whatever store that they bought their phone from, or they can go online and just really learn all the parental controls that are options available for you. Yeah. And a lot of times you don't need a third-party app. Obviously, there are some third-party apps that they could research that would help kind of restrict certain things, or you can set up a phone to where a child can't download apps onto the phone. Right. And things like this. Yeah. And so that's great, but always keep in mind, right, you kind of have to constantly check. Right. Because people and kids find ways to get around all sorts of stuff. Oh, yeah. And I think, too, the idea that, why do you first have to ask yourself, why do you want your kid to have a phone, right? And so there are phones out there that allow them to call and to text, and that's all they can do, So I think you've really got to be clear and ask yourself, not just because everybody else has it and you want them to fit in, but why do you want your kid to have a phone? I think you got to start with that. Okay, Ken, we are just down to about 3 minutes left in the show. So I just want to touch on, and we've talked a little bit. You said, you kind of give three things that good places to start. One is limit phones in schools, and we've been talking about that. Another one is reclaim human formation. And we've kind of been talking about that, too, why it's so important to have, this daily conversation and relationships with people that are flesh and blood versus virtual. And then the last one is lead by fasting. Can you say just a little bit on that? And then I want to get to the thing about what families and churches can do. Yeah. So I think fasting, I've learned in my spiritual life, Pat, fasting is just super important and probably doesn't happen enough in a lot of people's spiritual lives. It doesn't always have to be like huge, gigantic fasts. It can be little mortifications like giving up putting cream in your coffee in the morning or things like this, but with the intention of bringing God into your family. And then specifically, so I imagine like a little fasting from technology, like, hey, this weekend we're going to do a technology fast and we're not going to use technology for all of Saturday. And that includes mom and dad. And we're going to spend time as a family. You can start with like a half hour a day, an hour a day, but to really build into your life the idea that we're going to fast from this technology, get outside, touch grass, as the kids say.
Yeah.
And, and
I don't
build that into a family rhythm.
I don't want to, we've only got about a minute. So tell us about some of your ideas with family and church and technology.
Yeah, I just think we're missing out on a huge opportunity to pray over our technology. These things are in front of our faces all day, every day. And we take things to church to be blessed all the time. We take our animals to be blessed. We have priests bless rosaries. We have priests bless our cars, our homes. We should be blessing the things that we use the most in our lives. So to really think about that, to sit down and pray before you use your technology. Lord, my cell phone today, bless my interactions with my cell phone. Let my eyes not be tempted, and
Right.
things like this. I could see parishes like before school starts, like having kids and everyone bring up their technology and just blessing it. Like make it known. Like let the Lord into those spaces, even the digital ones, right? Like the Lord can get inside to any crack.
Oh, that's
and so
wonderful.
just to really be prayerful.
Oh, Kenneth, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show.
No, it was my honor, Pat.
I just want people to know Kenneth Cramer, Catholic writer, speaker, ministry professional, background in theology and counseling. I would encourage you to go to Catholic Stand and read both articles. God's children are under attack. And so this week, audience, let's take some time and maybe, do those things ourselves. If you use technology a lot, fast from it. Learn how to really reconnect and help your children understand how important it is. Train them in the ways of the Lord. You'll never go wrong. You've been listening to The Virtuous Life. I'm your host, Pat Odie Marie.